Hello YouTube and welcome to Cyprime Productions. I'm here to help enhance your tabletop gaming experience. So, I still have not yet fully recovered from PaizoCon2024, so I don't actually have a script for this video, so you're just gonna have to deal with me rambling off the cuff. I'm sorry. Before we get started, I want to thank everybody out there who gave me well wishes. You put stuff out on the internet and you expect the internet to be just mean and derogatory, and almost all of my comments have been nice or supportive, and I really want to thank you for that. Side note, please know that I have heard your requests for an archetype video, and I am writing a script for that, but I need to get past the Paizo and Howl of the Wild stuff first. That stuff is more time sensitive, but yes, I am working on an archetype video. So a lot of you asked how my PaizoCon went, and I'm going to tell you, but first I should probably say what PaizoCon is. PaizoCon is a convention. It used to be in person, but after COVID it switched to almost all online. It's basically where a bunch of people get together and play one-off Pathfinder scenarios in something called Pathfinder Organized Play or Starfinder Organized Play. There's a lot more to it than that, but that's the basic gist of it, is a bunch of people get together, play Paizo products, and those products are written by Paizo themselves, so they've got the Paizo stamp of approval. As for my experiences in PaizoCon, they were mostly pretty darn good. I did nothing but GM Starfinder over the con because I signed up to be both a Pathfinder and Starfinder GM because I can GM both, and apparently they really needed Starfinder GMs, so that's where they put me, and I was fine with that. Most of the Starfinder games, this is Starfinder First Edition by the way, most of the Starfinder games I GM'd were all low-level stuff, so that was fine by me. None of the high-level problems of Starfinder cropped up. There was one problem when my apartment had a power outage during one of the sessions, and, I had to keep on going by using my data plan on my cell phone to go into Discord to continue the conversation. And luckily, I had this scenario on my laptop, which still had battery power, so I was able to finish out the scenario. Big props to all of my players who were in that scenario. I'm so thankful you stuck with me. Thank you very much for sticking with me through a rough experience. I did get to play one game, which was the Pathfinder Society 2nd Edition multi-table special. If you don't know what that is, basically it's a whole bunch of people at the same time playing the same scenario at different tables, and what you do at one table affects the rest of the tables. So it's a really fun thing. The scenario is huge, and it's really fun to play through, and I'm glad I got to play it with my half-elf barbarian. Alright, so what you probably clicked on this video for was the PaizoCon keynote address and my summary of it. If you don't know, PaizoCon every year kicks off with a keynote address. This year it was 2 hours long, and they use that to hype all of their recent releases, but also talk about a bunch of new releases and have some new reveals. So I'm just going to go through it. I've got some notes here, but again, this is unscripted. So they started off the event by announcing that there were some smaller in-person PaizoCons that kind of dialed into the online PaizoCon, so that was pretty interesting, and I wish I could have gone to those. They announced some discounts that are probably not in effect anymore. They were in effect for PaizoCon, sorry. Then they started in on Starfinder stuff. They started off talking about Mechageddon, which is the final Starfinder First Edition adventure path. It's for levels 3 to 18 and involves giant robots called mechs. Mechs were released with the Tech Revolution Starfinder book, and they just go hog wild with it in the adventure path. Apparently they have demon-possessed mechs and mechs that can transform into starships a la Starscream, so that's pretty cool. After that, they got into the Starfinder 2 playtest information. Apparently, the playtest for Starfinder 2 will be very slightly delayed. It's going to be debuted at Gen Con, which is August 1st. So they said previously that it would be debuted late July. It looks like it's going to be debuted August 1st. They reviewed that there's going to be some new ancestries in the Starfinder Core rulebook, new to the Starfinder Core at least. All the ancestries that are in the original Starfinder First Edition core book are going to be in the Starfinder Second Edition core book, but we're also going to get Skittermanders, who are these fluffy, help-obsessed little guys. Patra, who are these feline aliens. They are actually not Amarun. They are a completely different catfolk race. called Patra, like I said, and then Brathu, who are going to be the first 2E race that can fly as a level 1 ability. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. There's going to be a physical Starfinder 2 book that you can buy, I guess, for collector value, but also the PDF for Starfinder 2 will be free. It does require the Pathfinder 2 core book to play. They said they didn't want to repeat a bunch of rules that they had already written, but if you don't have the player core, you can just go to Archives of Nethys, and that has all the rules for playing Pathfinder 2nd Edition, so that's where you can get your Starfinder 2nd Edition rules. No word on if the final Starfinder 2 book will require the Pathfinder 2 book to play. We'll just have to wait and see. They did announce that there are going to be some adventures that they are going to put out for the playtest. The first one is actually really, really big, and there's a spoiler alert, but the first adventure they are going to put out is called A Cosmic Birthday, and it involves Akaturn, which is this Pluto-like planet in the Starfinder system, exploding and a Cthulhian nightmare creature hatching from the planet. So there's going to be a pretty big shakeup that kicks off Starfinder 2. They also mentioned a second adventure that they're going to put out a little bit after the first, called Empires Devoured. That is a level 10 adventure, and it involves another major event where the Aslanti Star Empire, who are space fascists, go to war with the Veskarium, who are actually, honestly, also kind of space fascists, but like less bad space fascists. That second adventure will be released in October. They also said that there's going to be a free RPG Day mini bestiary for Starfinder 2 called Second Contact. They did that actually for Starfinder 1 as well, so keep a lookout for that. They did confirm that Starfinder and Pathfinder should be almost fully compatible with each other. There's going to be some skills in Starfinder that don't show up in Pathfinder, but other than that, they should be compatible. However, they did say the balance point might be different. For example, the ability to fly is much easier to get into Starfinder, so keep that in mind when crossing the two over. They also talked about how their master plan for Starfinder 2 will be revealed at Gen Con, so stay tuned for that. They then moved on to Player Core 2 for Pathfinder and noted a few things, most of which we already knew. They did say that the Oracle got, quote, fascinating new changes. There are new ancestries, feats, spells, all that stuff. They did reveal what would be the new ancestries released in Player Core 2. Those are Catfolk, called Amarun, Hobgoblin, Kolo, who are Gnolls, Kobolds, Lizardfolk, Yosoki, who are Ratfolk, and Tripki, which is the new term for Gripply, which are frog people. They also announced these versatile heritages like Dampier, Duskwalker, and Dragon-Blooded, and they said Dragon-Blooded would be a very flexible, versatile heritage. Now, we already knew this, but they reiterated that the 8 classes coming out in Player Core 2 for the remaster are Remastered Alchemist, Barbarian Champion, Investigator, Monk, Sorcerer, Oracle, and Swashbuckler, and of these, the Alchemist, Champion, and Oracle got the most changes. They did assure everybody that all of the classes got at least some changes, though. They then moved on to playtest things. First, they talked about the War of the Immortals playtest and said that the Animist subclass system was completely revamped, which is good because, quite frankly, that didn't work out very well in the playtest. They also said that there were new icons for the Exemplars, and then they said that the Battlecry playtest that just came out and is actually still ongoing as of the posting of this video got a record number of downloads, so apparently a lot of people are interested in it. They moved on to Howl of the Wild. Most of that stuff I already covered in a previous video. They then talked about the Tien Jia books coming out. One is the World Guide, which is already out. It has a bunch of new deities, so if you want to play a deity that's not one of the core 20 in Pathfinder, the Tien Jia World Guide has a bunch that are updated for the remaster. They also talked about the Character Guide, which is coming out in August and will have 6 new backgrounds. All of those have been released. I'll put them on screen now. In particular, they talked about the Wei-Yang, which is this kind of creature. They said that the Wei-Yang is kind of exemplifying the trope of dark is not evil, and that they have several dance ancestry feats that let them manipulate shadows. They also talked about new heritages for the Poppet and Sprite. And lastly, they talked about the Familiar Sage archetype, and that can let you merge with your familiar and do a bunch of other really cool things with your familiar. Lastly, they talked about a Durian Crab familiar that lets you kick them at enemies, I guess as a weapon, so I guess now you can just play Waka from Final Fantasy X. They then moved on to some War of the Immortals stuff. I already talked about a lot of this in the previous video. They did go on to preview some of the mythic rules, though. They now have a thing called a Mythic Calling, which I think is taking the place of the Mythic Path from Pathfinder 1st Edition. And they said it works kind of like a free archetype. They gave the examples of like a Mythic Guardian or a Mythic Sage. They did briefly talk about a Mythic Proficiency, which I guess is not always active, but it lets you give a massive boost to a single skill check. So maybe if you really need to make a skill, you can use your Mythic Proficiency. They also talked about something called Mythic Destinies, but did not expand on them. It sounded kind of like those are capstones for Mythic Callings. But they gave an example of like a prophesized monarch, so maybe like a Conan the Barbarian kind of thing.
In time, he became a king by his own hand. This story shall also be told.
They then talked about mythic monsters and how they wouldn't be super powerful compared to the base monsters of a similar creature level, how the mythic abilities basically let them have an extra challenge to them without just making the numbers higher. They gave an example of a mythic trickster. When it would die, it auto-swaps bodies with an appropriate animal within 100 miles, so to kill a mythic trickster, you need to, like, trap them in a demiplane or something. They then talked about a little bit of the War of the Immortals story. They said that this is Virix, a new spawn of Rovagug, who used to be an orc god, but I guess now he's working for Rovagug. Side note, did you know that Kira and Mauriciel are actually officially married now? I knew they were dating, but I did not know that they were married in the story. They also talked a little bit about the God's Reign book and how trying to stop Rovagug from waking up is the main push of the book. They talked about some new stuff in the War of the Immortals line. I already talked about a lot of this in a previous video. They did confirm that in Pray for Death, which is a module for evil characters, they said specifically not Snidely Whiplash mustache-twirling evil, that Gorham dies in this module and your characters get to witness it. So I had previously assumed it would be in Curtain Call, but it is actually in Pray for Death. A little bit of extra information about Curtain Call. It takes place in Kintargo, which was actually the setting of the Pathfinder 1st Edition adventure path Hell's Rebels. It's one of the few cities that has broken away from evil Chilaxian rule. War of the Tusk is going to be another adventure path set in that War of the Immortals line. It's 3-11, and it deals with the aftermath of the War of the Immortals. It takes place exclusively in Belkzen, which is like an orc stronghold. They talked about that new gods book coming out, talking about Aslanti gods are in there, new pantheons are in there. There's something called a covenant, which is similar to a pantheon, and it's going to be in there. And you may finally be able to make a cleric of a philosophy. They said specifically that the esoteric order of the Palatine Eye can get divine powers, even though they don't worship a god, they worship a philosophy. So I know a lot of green faith people that will be really interested in that. Also, they just casually dropped that the god Abdar has a brother, apparently. They did not expand upon that at all. Finally, they said that Razmir, who is an archmage and ruler of a small country, may have divine powers. You see, Razmir actually, pretends to be a god, and maybe he's now getting divine powers because so many people worship him. Who knows? They briefly talked about some VTT and internet stuff, saying that there's going to be VTT support for new modules, new monsters, new tokens, and the Starfinder playtest. This is all for Foundry, by the way, so if you're a Foundry user, that's pretty cool. They also mentioned a third Starfinder 2e playtest scenario called Wheel of Monsters, which will feature Zoe, who is a undead media mogul. Lastly, they talked about a new Paizo Pathfinder board game called Pathfinder Quest. It's for 1 to 4 adventurers, and it lets you make your own character, and it kind of sounds like these old D&D adventure games, which I really had fun with for a time. There's going to be a backer kit campaign for it. Backer kit is similar to Kickstarter. Finally, from the keynote, they wanted to thank the volunteers. They thanked all the Pathfinder Infinite and Starfinder Infinite creators, like myself, and that felt good. And they wanted to remind everybody about BCom Studios. They are developing an Abomination Vaults video game that sounds like it's going to be a lot like Diablo-style games. Anyway, that was it for the keynote. There's going to be some other videos, I hope, coming down the line talking about other announcements that Paizo made, but for now, that's it. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. That lets YouTube know that you like my kind of videos, and thank you, good luck, and happy gaming.